Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
Federal employees may soon have to start signing non-disclosure agreements. The Office of Personnel Management has unveiled a government-wide NDA template for agencies. It's an attempt to stop government documents from being leaked to the press. Here with more is Federal News Network's Drew Friedman. Drew, great to have you. Thanks for joining me.
Nice to be with you, Terry.
All right. NDAs, this is something new. How would this work and who would have to sign one?
So the way that OPM has teed up this proposal is to have agencies, if they choose to, adopt this government-wide NDA and have both their current employees and prospective new hires sign that agreement. Agencies who choose to use the government-wide NDA would, it may also be applicable to their federal contractors they work with, and really just anyone who might have access to sensitive systems or protected information. This is something that seems to be pretty broad here in the way that it's being proposed from OPM.
You said if agencies choose to implement, is it your sense that agencies would actually have a choice, that this would not be a mandate?
The way that OPM has written it is that it's not a mandate. It's something that agencies can choose to opt into or not. There have been some questions about whether it is a true option for agencies. The American Federation of Government Employees had a statement today questioning whether it was really going to be optional or if OPM would potentially try to push agencies to adopt this. So it's, again, not totally clear because this is just an initial proposal, but there are certainly questions about that aspect of it.
What sorts of disclosures would be covered by this non-disclosure agreement?
It seems to be a pretty broad range of things. So the OPM talked about anything dealing with internal agency operations. That could be a broad range of things, personnel matters, procurement processes, or they wrote any sensitive, pre-decisional, or deliberative material that's not currently publicly available. And they said it can include all of those things, but it's also not limited to those factors. So it seems to be pretty much covering a lot here under this NDA if it does take effect. The document also talks about how, employees, if they sign it, they have to agree that any confidential information that they're handling should only be used for their official duties and responsibilities, and that employees would have to agree to promptly notify their agency if they see any, quote, unauthorized disclosures being made or that they are suspicious of.
This sounds like it is taking the control that the Pentagon was trying to put on folks and extending it across all of the federal agencies. Is that the root of this effort?
That seems to be related or have a lot of similarities there. And the Trump administration has taken other steps to try to prevent leaks to the press. For example, there was earlier this year the FBI raid on the Washington Post reporter's house. And there were also reports in 2025 that the Department of Homeland Security, along with a couple of other agencies, were having employees take polygraph tests to try to root out who was leaking different documents or information to the press. So this isn't the first step here, of course, in Trump administration's efforts, but it seems to be aligning with some of the past things that they've already been working towards, including the Pentagon requirements.
Are there any limitations on this NDA? How does it interact with, say, whistleblower protections?
It does say in the draft agreement that OPM released that it would not restrict whistleblower protections. And it also said that employees who do sign it would still be able to communicate instances of fraud, waste, and abuse, for example, to Congress or to an inspector general office. But it does, again, seem to be a pretty broad blanket NDA here. There's no real time limit on it. The agreement says that even if employees change jobs or change agencies or even leave government, unless they're given express written permission from an agency official, the NDA still applies to them. Again, going back to the type of content or information that it covers, it also seems to be pretty broad there, but there are limitations, and it does specifically say in the agreement that it doesn't supersede whistleblower protection laws.
Drew, do you have a sense that this is going to be in any way optional for employees? Can they say, I don't want to sign?
It's, I think, going to depend on a couple of factors. One is which agencies are going to start implementing the NDA and having employees sign it. So it may depend on what agency you work at. And then beyond that, it could depend on your position or something like that. But it seems like in general, this is going to cover pretty much any federal employee where the agency has agreed to implement this. And then also new hires, as I mentioned, who would also be required to sign the NDA as part of their onboarding process.
And so if someone does sign it and then later breaches the NDA, shares information with the media or something else, does this specify what sort of penalties they might be subject to?
It could be pretty significant penalties. It says that if you violate the NDA, at least according to this draft document, that it could result in disciplinary action, including simply being fired from your job. There could also be civil or criminal penalties that are incurred that may depend on the severity of the breach of the NDA. But there's certainly going to be repercussions for federal employees who sign it and later violate the agreement. And it's not clear if employees choose or don't want to sign the agreement in the first place. There would likely be some sort of discipline against that type of action as well, but that's a little bit less clear just because this is still in the early stages of development and it's just a pretty short proposal as of now, but we might learn more about some more specifics of what that would look like once OPM is finalizing this.
So with this short proposal, did OPM offer any sort of overarching logic or argument for why this kind of an approach was necessary?
It absolutely ties back to what they say are recent leaks to the press of different government documents, for example, regulations and draft proposals. It also talks about recent leaks of ICE employees' names and personal information, and a couple of other instances that they're flagging about why this is necessary. But if you look at the general blanket statement for what OPM says here, they talk about how having a standard form would promote consistency across government. It would protect what they call confidential information, and then have federal employees be more informed of both their rights and their obligations. OPM was very clear in the fact that this isn't changing any applicable laws, but simply just a reminder to employees of what they can and can't do with that confidential information that they are given access to as part of their jobs.
And what sort of a timeline are we looking at here? They're going to get some comment back. When might a final proposal come out?
Usually, just because this is going through the regulatory process, it would probably take at least several months for this to all be ironed out. And then from there, it also depends on how quickly agencies will be implementing it once there is a supposed final rule. So I'd imagine it wouldn't be likely for potentially this fall or winter, but it's something that seems to be coming for employees here, and definitely something to just be aware of.
That's Federal News Network's Drew Friedman. Drew, thanks for bringing us up to speed on it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You can find her story at federalnewsnetwork.com.